Shall we take a roll call just to?
Do we have to, here, why don't we just count?
Or I can just, we've got Debbie Rainey, Christy Slaughter, Jane Woodall, Scott McCoy, and Michael Berkeley in attendance.
Thank you. Got the list with you. And understand that we do have an open position, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I would like to amend the agenda. Could we add, discuss and take action on officers?
To item number 6.2. Any other amendments to? Do I have a motion for the approval of the amended agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second. Motion has been seconded for the approval of the agenda that's been amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes for the August meeting?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second for the approval of the minutes for the August meeting. All those approved?
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor? Thank you. Anybody opposed? Have been approved. Start with old business, roadscapes project on Highway 100 and Highway 96 Junction in Fairview and the associated dedication, the remaining tasks and requirements from the Tree Commission. Pictures.
So I spoke with the representative with LSI, that's Barry Castle, today. Barry was not, has not been available for over a month now. He had knee surgery. And he is my direct contact for getting the replacement done. He says today that it would be the end of this month, which would make sense because it's better planting time. We added one more dead redbud, and the commission now has the updated list as of today. You can see 2 dead redbuds in Area 1. Without another walkthrough, which I believe we're good, then this list stands as far as what LSI is responsible for replacing. And that's all the commitment I have, is that they will replace it at the end of this month, end of September.
So is it true that we have to have the final walkthrough by December 1? Is that the contract? Is that the,
I didn't see anything about that. Be glad to do it. We'll have to get Barry to commit to that, which that'd be great. But everything's dormant in December.
right, but I mean, but we had to have the walkthrough completed
Yeah.
by December
Yeah,
1.
I'll be glad to set it up. I would like also a third representative from the city in that as well.
City manager? Codes?
Codes. Someone else from the city of Fairview I would like to have, preferably from City Hall, to walk with me and the representative from LSI. Since Lawson Associates is no longer available, it's good to have that third party anyway. And you know, I saw that on the minutes is about TDOT has broken their ties with Lawson Associates on this all roadscapes projects, not just a project, but all roadscapes project.
Is that confirmed?
It is confirmed. Andrew Krager, the landscape architect with Lawson Associates, and this was back in June, that I contacted him to set up what I would consider a walkthrough at that time, because I knew there were dead plants, and LSI was ready to walk through it as well. And I was told by Andrew that we are no longer to discuss, and that TDOT has actually, as the word was given, forbidden to discuss the roadscapes with Lawson Associates. But since Andrew is working on the parks project, the designs, he is connected. I cannot ask him questions about the roadscapes.
Well, is Lawson Associates, is that confirmed that they're working on that?
On the parks projects? That's what I was told
Recently?
back in the summer.
Okay, I think that may have changed. Yeah, we need to
Okay.
check on that. Okay, yeah, I know.
Either way, I have no connection with Lawson Associates to do a walkthrough. Some of the other tidbits is that I got Keith with Public Works to give me an idea of how much time it takes for the guys, the crew, to be out there weed eating like they're doing right now. It's 3.5 hours for 3 guys.
There have been people who have stepped up and volunteered to do that,
To weed eat.
to keep it clean. So if we can get that approved by the city, I would think that that would be, there would have to be some sort of escort, for lack of a better word, that would kind of, I guess like they do when they do the litter pickup, the same kind of thing.
Like the Adopt a Highway.
But
Well-
why couldn't they do it like adopt a highway?
Well, I actually have an Adopt a Highway 2-mile stretch on Highway 1 on Fairview Boulevard, and all that TDOT will provide are the bright green, fluorescent green vest, and that's it. That's all they provide. Everything else,
Could you move your 2 mile of adopted highway to the median?
actually, it is on that.
I was gonna say,
But it's
Really?
just, yeah. But it's strictly for litter, pick up litter. Okay, I would like to show some photos, and there's a big, and there, hopefully there's a conclusion at the end that I would like to, some feedback from you guys. Okay, this photo is the original, and the reason I'm showing this photo is that they were, the specifications talked about the river gravel, the river rock, having landscape fabric under it. And you can see right there. You can go to the other. Okay. All right, and this is a photo taken in February 1st, February the 3rd of 2017. This is May of 2017. It's the same bed. This is a close-up of a weed that was not pre-existing in that, this is called spiked rush.
Is that the yellow thing?
No, the yellow thing actually is supposed to be there. That's a,
Oh, the little clump is a weed?
yeah, that weed is taller. It's a weird grass. It's a sedge, and related to the sedges. And it's a wetland species that I did not see there pre-existing. There were several weeds, and I could give you, probably 3 or 4 species names that were not there. This photo was taken in June, mid-June. Okay, so this is also taken in mid-June. Now, fabric is to prevent weeds. The mulch is to prevent weeds. So from the photo that you saw of the triangle bed that had the grasses in it, that was 1st of February to mid-June, actually 1st of June. Weeds were germinating, weed seeds were germinating in there. And again, you could just be a homeowner and mulch your own yard and realize that you put mulch down for that reason, is to prevent weed seeds from germinating. These weeds were germinating in the mulch, not from underneath the mulch. They were germinating in the mulch. I mentioned this, my conclusion, my guess is that the mulch came in tainted and contaminated with the weed seeds, which is why we had such a fast germination and speed of the growth of the plants. If it came out from underneath the mulch, or even if it was blown on top of the mulch, it would take a while for those seeds to germinate sitting on top of the mulch. The weed seeds were in the mulch as though they were planted, so the mulch came in with the weed seeds in them. And again, it's my guess, from what I know for decades of doing this, is that there's no way those weeds would have gotten like the way they are right now if the mulch and the landscape fabric and the gravel was doing its work.
Are they collecting the grass, or is it?
It's blowing on it, but a lot, again, the weed seeds are planted. Now, if you blew the grass clippings over onto the mulch bed and then disturbed it and planted it, you would probably get something like that. But these weeds are coming up from out of the mulch, germinated inside the mulch. And when mulch gets that, this is hardwood mulch, and when mulch disintegrates and decomposes to that point, it becomes just a rich soil. So it was a potting mix, and that's why you had such a fast germination of the weed seeds and why you had such a fast growth of the weeds in there. I mentioned this, my guess, to Barry with LSI this morning, and he says, I don't know anything about it. I wasn't there at the beginning of this project.
I know this is the same question I've asked. It's kind of like Bowie Commons. I realize I've asked this question 5 million times. Who was responsible for making sure that LSI was doing the job the contract called for them to do?
Melosin Associates.
Lawson Associates then sat here one night and told us they only had limited, what was the word they used? They only had limited oversight?
Melosin Associates put in the specifications on their design, and I could pull out the design and see, but I don't remember seeing anything that said only provide weed seed-free mulch. So if the specs were not put in, and the reason that you don't do it is that it's just common sense. You don't put old mulch on
Well, yeah.
with weed seed contamination.
So what do we do?
The fact that LSI, Paul Stacy III, sent a letter for an estimate of how much it would cost for them to come in and weed that, clean it, weed it, and put fresh mulch, it was around $10,000.
Is that the city's responsibility, or is that LSI?
That should, my take is that it should be LSI's responsibility.
Well, I found out, let's say this week, because maybe last week, that according to the state, which I found interesting, according to the state, it was the city of Fairview that requested the River Rock.
I don't think it's the River Rock.
Well, I know, but I'm just adding that in as information
Yeah.
too. That it was that the state did not require that we requested that, which I would also assume makes it a little harder to maintain in the middle because you can't weed eat the rock and the weeds that are coming through it.
Well, the landscape fabric is supposed to prevent that.
Well, I know. Is it?
No,
Okay.
I don't think there's a bond.
No bond.
I understand what you're saying, Debbie, but I sat in here with the engineer from TDOT, the area engineer, supervisor engineer for engineering with TDOT that lives in Hickman County. And he said there's no way in the world that he would allow just mulch through those beds because of water issues, that the water had to run through the middle.
It was not
That
the
you
tree
couldn't
board of the
block.
city, that was TDOT.
That was
requesting
TDOT.
the river.
So what is the answer?
I believe, and I will go on record saying that I believe that you will have to, the city would have to pursue legal letter
Against LSI?
to LSI. And if they were gonna charge $10,000 to do this, okay, they were gonna make a lot of money on doing something that, again, it is my opinion, strictly my opinion, that they made it this way. I don't think it was intentional by all means, but it was a bad mistake. Brought in contaminated hardwood mulch that was already mostly decomposed. It was great seed germination mix. And so the weeds just went crazy. And there are, like I said, there are several species of weeds that I do not recall at the beginning were pre-existing. I think is there another photo? At 6. Okay, yeah, and this is one of them. And the other reason I'm showing this, on your updated list, down at the bottom, 31 Calicarpa americana beautyberry, dead or wrong species. The plant on the left of broadleaf, the wide leaf plant, that's an American beautyberry that was spec'd in on the job. The shrub to the right, going up to the upper right, that's an Asian beautyberry that was put in instead of the American beautyberry. Top right corner, yeah, it's kind of small leaf, you can almost, yeah, exactly.
Susie, do we have the laser?
Yeah, she's got an arrow on it.
Okay, well, I see, I'm looking.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the smaller, it's a small leaf, it is a beautyberry. When they're dormant, I could see there's some confusion. When the leaves come out, it's very distinctive, big difference. And of course, what we took great pride in this Rosescape was that every plant was a North American native.
Do we have any pictures of what it's supposed to look like? Do you still have
Of
how it should have looked?
the beautyberry?
No, of the whole,
I don't have photos. I've got of course, the original design. I don't, we've listened to a lot of negative comments about the Rosescapes. And I kept thinking all along, well, this is not the way it's supposed to be. I know those plants. I've worked with them for almost 30 years, and I know what those plants are supposed to do. And they are not doing what they're supposed to do because they are not, I don't believe they were installed properly. The wrong plants were installed, and then the mulch was the bad one. Yes. Calicarpa americana, there were, I believe, I could look and see it, it's probably around 45 to 50 that were spec'd in on the original. And as you can see, 31 of them were either dead or they put the wrong plants in.
those the ones, there were also too many of them, that if they'd actually lived, which one was it that you said that they had so many they would never, that they'd be too big?
The yellow flower plant, shrub that you saw in the previous photograph, that's a sunburst hypericum, yeah, that. yellow flower, and those were put in 1 gallon containers. So it's a shrub that's supposed to get up to about 3 to 4 feet. Blue foliage, really pretty, and then the bloom is just spectacular. Fall color is almost burning bush-like. But they put in a lot of them very tight, and they get around 4 feet wide on the average. They were planted on 18-inch to 2-foot on center. So, but Andrew told me that whenever they do a roadscape project with TDOT, they plant for mortality. So they plant so that later, if some of them do die, you still have the fullness. And what we did also, so made a judgment call on this, is that since the beautyberry, the 31 beautyberry was, he had too many in that already. And he's going to replace those Asian and dead beautyberries, the Asian beautyberries, with the cardinal red twig dogwood. So right now, 1st of September, if you drive down through there, you'll see these beautiful reds standing up. That's the cardinal red twig dogwood. And it will stay that way till next May, June. It'll stay that red color. And I think that is appropriate plant for that. So what we did on mid-June to get this list together is that we looked at what was also surviving, what was doing great. You do not see any Juniperus virginiana gray owl on there. That's the low-growing cedar shrub, blue-green shrub. Those are kicking. The panicum, the red switchgrass, doing great. Because they've already replaced dead, when Andrew was in the loop, he required them to replace so many, and I don't know the number right now, but back last year of the sunburst hypericum, all of those from this walkthrough, from this inventory, all of those are surviving.
Ask a question. Is there fabric under those rocks?
Showed you the photo, and that was at the beginning of a bed on the east side. Right there, yeah. So that's
where they put the
fabric.
rock down.
Yeah, the rock, and what they did, I just happened to catch this on the day they were finishing it up, and they were already breaking for the day. And so they did not finish putting the rock on the fabric. So what you see in the foreground in that bed, that's the fabric.
Cece, can you
Did the
zoom in on
fabric
that?
go up to the sides underneath
Will it
the mulch
zoom?
as well?
That's the fabric. And it is a good fabric. It's a woven fabric so that water can permeate through, rain can go through it. And again, the TDOT engineer, the reason he required this is so that water would run almost like a well, a ditch, and run to the point of least resistance is what water's supposed to do. But you see the standing water, that's another reason I have this photo.
It's still standing in places.
It's still standing in
Yeah.
places. But that's not, I do not think that that's the fault of LSI. They were not required to do any hydro engineering there. They were just required, what was spec'd in, the original specs is that, okay, we'll put landscape fabric down. Andrew did put that in from Lawson Associates, and put river rock on top of it. The engineering to get that water to run was actually, should be TDOT. And I remember walking out there before the installation began and there was standing water.
Fabric go underneath the mulch?
No,
The rock?
no, it's just that 4-foot width right there. I don't think that's necessarily good. Keeping good, clean mulch on top of it every 6 months at minimum is probably the best thing you can do to prevent.
Round kind of, sort of about would be the cost of that, replacing that mulch, that much mulch every 6 months.
Well, if LSI said $10,000 to weed and put mulch, I would say 80% of that was probably the labor. Mulch, and I don't know how many yards, he may have had that, let me look and see. How many yards of hardwood mulch he spec'd in on this.
I mean, what in the world would it take to get all the weeds out of there and start over?
What they were gonna do was not just do weed pulling, but spraying with an herbicide to kill the weeds, because they were so bad. Again, this is what Paul Stacy said.
Would they be limited to what they could?
It would be.
Not draining.
Okay, they had in yards, 2,258 yards of shredded hardwood mulch.
Average price of mulch, kind of.
Hardwood, maybe we would charge at the nursery about $30 a cubic yard. I would say he could probably get this hardwood mulch, probably about half of that, $15 to $20 a yard.
And we have to have 2,258 of them.
High-end. $67.
You're talking.
How much?
He may have, well, if you say $10, and he's getting it at $10 a yard, then he is getting the cheapest hardwood mulch, and which is probably the reason that he can do that.
$10.
I would not buy mulch at $10 a yard. That one bit.
You say
That's
Okay.
cubic yards, yeah, that's,
we're talking 22,000
yeah,
for the cheap.
yeah, see why, cubic yard. He spec'd in 2,258 cubic yards. Now, it's not, that's for the whole project, and this area here, and the turnout to your left is where I showed you the bed before and after bed. Yeah, that. Okay, that is only, there's only the median to the middle, and this that actually probably needs the mulch.
Is there fabric under that? Is that fabric I see on the,
It's hardwood mulch that has, problem with hardwood mulch, I won't touch it. Hardwood mulch will seize up because there's cellulose in it. It's like Elmer's glue in nature. And it will actually form plates where they are glued together. So you'll see these rigid lines sometimes in the mulch, in the hardwood, that no other mulch does because of that cellulose. So, you know, in my own business, I won't use hardwood mulch. Even if the client requests it, I will not use hardwood mulch, only because of that main reason. And that inhibits airflow, exchange of gases with the roots, and water big time, rain.
so what should you use?
A pine bark. And the cost is, went to a box store and bought a bag of hardwood mulch and a bag of pine bark mulch. The volume's the same, the cost is the same. So, but what these guys will do is get the cheapest bulk, and somewhere, and it could be in their own yard, their own business yard, they may have this hardwood mulch packed up, stacked up, and they bought it in real cheap, sat on it for a couple of years. I would guess that this is probably 2 years old. That's why it's so decomposed. And so, you know, they're probably not going out to a mulch yard and buying this. So they probably got this as cheap as they possibly could, which is a decomposed, weed contaminated hardwood mulch.
Weed starter. Weed starter.
A weed starter. I am here as a city arborist showing what I know and giving, again, my opinion. Also, it is my opinion that LSI will never agree to this.
Very encouraging. I would suggest
I
that
have
we
worked
send the
with them before.
recommendation to the arborist up to the BLC.
So what was the original yardage specification for the mulch?
Yeah, and all he says, he just says 2,258 cubic yards. He does not, in general notes,
And just to make sure, I'm visualizing that in my head, and that would be a square block of mulch, 150 feet wide, long, and tall.
you gotta put it, you know, about, 4 inches deep.
Okay, so I'm just matching it to the dimensions, 150 wide, 150 tall, and then spread out down that strip? That's
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, spread down that strip. But see, the original, again, and I'm gonna show, okay, so this is just all right, so there was area E, all of this, and this area here. And so there's beds down in here that they also planted. And all we're talking about is one bed, that bed you, that photograph there is right here and just outside this turnout. Okay, it's right here. It's also where two of the red buds that are dead. You can see one right there on the left. The one in the middle up at the top, that's one of the only living red buds they have in. Off to the right, outside the photo, there is the other dead red bud. That bed and then the bed all along here are really the ones that need to be corrected. And I cannot figure out why these beds down here did not end up with a lot of weed seeds. It's mowed. Why are some of these other beds out in here that are also planted with the grasses, native grasses, some of the tree rings, the mulch around the tree rings, why didn't they end up with so it's mowed. So and it seems like that right through the middle is where the bad mulch went in. Then this, and by the way, Andrew, one of the last walkthroughs that he was involved in, see, can you go forward? Keep going. One more. Okay, go. There should be one that shows a bed without, that's dormant. Okay, that one. Okay, so you can't see it because it is a dormant grass, but see the turf right there in the foreground? That's Bermuda. And if you know what Bermuda is, it's a warm season grass from South Africa, and it spreads like crazy. So we saw the problem with along the edge, the Bermuda was creeping in. Also in that bed were so many pink muhly grasses that were dead. So Andrew said, correct that, and they did. And that mulch there was clean. The mulch they brought in, go to the the other photo of that bed? That bed was clean. The only weeds in that were, that's what happened.
So that's the dormant bed we just saw?
Yeah. They've replaced, they put some other grasses in, they've got some muley still in there existing. But this, where on my list that talks about non-muley grass dead, area G, 10 muley grass dead, the muley grasses is what took the biggest hit, I think, on the grasses. And then some of these other grasses that they had in there survived. But the point was about the bed, is that until they put that other mulch on that, that was an add-on that Lawson Associates, Andrew Krager from Lawson Associates had required, is that, okay, you need to weed this bed, remulch it. And that's what happened after it got remulched.
The recommendation is that
City attorney involved. This is the photos of that Andrew first showed here. I don't know, you probably remember that. And, you know, I want to make note that this is not hardwood mulch that you see in there. That's fine. It could be pine bark, it could be, you know, but they can't get that bulk and that price. So they probably got the cheapest bargain they could get on this second. Because at that point, they probably, okay, this is low bid. This is a state job. It was low bid. We were required to go with low bid. And the next lowest bid was thousands of dollars difference than what LSI put in. And this is not my opinion. This is the fact. It was thousands of dollars. And in my own business, when I go do government work, I don't expect to get low bid. It's according to who I'm bidding against. I don't expect to get low bid, but I do expect to be close to it. And if I hear of a job that was the second, they had 3 bids, the second bid was thousands of dollars away, it's not even close in the ballpark, then I would question, why is that such a low bid? And I think that was, so at that point, there, my guess, in my opinion, is that they were probably strapped on, you know, they get their money, and they had to come back and remulch. They got cheap mulch. And that, again, you can see it. I think the big thing is that you can see it now. You can still go down to these other beds and you don't see the weed problem.
So have we seen the original contract with LSI about what was required of them? Has anyone actually laid eyes on that?
All I have is a license agreement that was signed back in December of 2014. The city has this copy, and it just says, the one note on here, the cost of any maintenance and operation of improvements shall be at the sole expense of the licensee, which is the city of Fairview. There is nothing else in here. I spoke with Jerry Blankenship. He was on the original committee. He's a nurseryman out of McMinnville, Tennessee, and he was on the original committee to review all roadscapes across the state of Tennessee. And one of the things he wanted to get through with TDOT, with this new roadscapes project this years ago, is to make sure there is something in there about maintenance. And when this was signed back in 2014, I think at that moment you probably could have put on there, well, about the maintenance, and a little bit more. That's very general right there. It just says that the licensee is responsible for maintenance of improvements. And that's maybe the big word right there, is for improvements.
We aren't improving, we're trying to get it right to begin with. What's the motion going to the board? I suggest that we recommend to the board the city arborist recommendation. Mike, can you repeat it?
I believe that I would send a letter from the city to the contractor, LSI, stating what we are seeing, that the mulch was contaminated with weed seed.
And?
And-
And the recommended solution to that would
That
be
they correct us.
how?
They will have to go in and remove weeds, kill all existing weeds, and remulch with a, and this is what, by the way, I mean, is that Wayne Hall did send out a spec to LSI on this before they sent that $10,000 estimate. I told them to put in that request to put seed-free mulch. So they are, it's spec'd in on that. So I would say that the letter needs to say that it needs to have, be remulched with seed-free mulch.
Weed seed. free.
Weed seed-free mulch. Did I get that right?
I believe I'll go ahead and make a motion and have it voted on.
In a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. One day, say it was all worth it because
I still
it will be
believe it is.
beautiful, right? We're
I
gonna
believe
get it
it's
right.
gonna be.
Attenborough Commons.
Good luck.
Okay, 5.2, Tree City update. This should go faster, right?
Yeah, it should go faster. So their website is back operational. I was in there and filled in the rest of our math. Our math looks good for the covenants they require of per capita spend. However, I ran into one of the requirements is that we've got to have an Arbor Day proclamation and an Arbor Day observance from a city perspective. So from the proclamation, you know, I've got a sample that another city has done. They're pretty straightforward. It's something that I could actually probably pull from another city that looks well, and then we could forward that, I guess, to the board. Now, timing of this, whether that's something that makes sense to go ahead and make the proclamation for a future Arbor Day, we could do that and have that paperwork that we could say we did it on this date in an official city meeting, so we could get that piece. I think we would be able to do that now, even for a future event. However, the second part is the observance, and what they require for the observance is, and we did that this year, we had some events, and it's just basically a schedule of the events that were on that day. Did we have some trees, some other things that were going on, activities? So I think I could probably take the activities from the one we just passed at, and then if we could do a proclamation for the next Arbor Day coming up, that gives me the last two pieces of paperwork to attach and then close it out and send it in, and then I'm sure there'll probably be a round of back and forth questions from them.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, I've got one here. This one was from, it's in Nebraska, and it basically ties it in a little bit to Nebraska because Sterling Morton, I assume that's a Nebraskan person, proposed the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting trees. And this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, now therefore I, Mayor of the city, do hereby proclaim Arbor Day for the city of Fairview in our case, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and of future generations. And then the BOC would vote on that, and we could say that's our proclamation.
Is that National Arbor Day or Tennessee Arbor Day?
It's national.
That's national, and that's the one we do.
Or Tennessee
Yeah, and we've gone back and forth with that on the day, and which one do we
want to celebrate?
want to celebrate? And the one for the national is in late
April.
April.
It'll be
right?
April,
Third
Friday, April 27th of the coming year.
Saying it's almost
Close
too
to
late to
Earth Day.
plant stuff.
No, not at all. I think it's perfect timing. And in fact, you know, the whole idea of building the redbud as a city tree and putting the redbuds around City Hall was to also coincide during that time. They would be in peak bloom, give or take a week or two, but they would be coming into bloom then, and that would be great. You could celebrate the arbor. So always the issue with me was that I would not be available on that.
Is there a
We
way
did
of
it.
proclamation to
Yeah, that,
between the two?
I would think so, and I could pull from some, there's several cities in Tennessee, so I bet they've done a lot of homework to find out what makes sense historically from a state perspective, and so I could look to those two for guidance in assembling one that talks about Fairview. We could even tie it into mentioning the park and what we've got here, you know, make it very
But the
localized.
observant or the
Yeah.
part of
Arbor Day.
Arbor Day.
And we at one time, one of the first Arbor Days, the Division of Forestry with the state gave us maybe was it 100 pin oak, I think, that we gave out, bare root, you know, oaks to give out, and you know, and had it in the Observer listing that this is what we're going to do, and we had a great turnout. People got free trees. You could request that again, I'm sure. You know, you'd have to do it now.
So we should probably do that, and how do we go about
I
putting
can
in?
I can follow up on that. I just
Yeah, that would be great.
and just seeing if we can go ahead and book them. If you notice on TV now, there's commercials for trees from the State Forest Nursery. They never did that before. They're selling trees. It's revenue generating for probably the most strapped, and when it comes to state budget is the, you know, parks and recreation with the state and Division of Forestry. And they're always down at the bottom for when it comes to the money. So they got smart about it and said, okay, well, we have a state nursery, and they grow native trees. And most of these are hardwoods because the original intent of the state nurseries set aside was for forestry, redoing the forestry after logging. Okay, and so when you've got state forest, they were growing these trees to put in the state forest after the forests were cut. So now they got smart and said, okay, well, we can sell these. So landowners have tapped into it and it comes out very cheap.
In look online and probably read about that as well. I've got some information from last year.
Yeah, that would be great.
We also, I believe, one of the early observances, we planted a red bud, a memorial red bud, which, yeah.
Have a photo.
That was
sure.
after the tornadoes hit here. 2008-ish.
So, question, okay, what are we we're trying to get that sign at the city limits.
That we're a tree
We're
city.
a Tree City, USA.
We won't tell them about
Thanks for
Taco
all
Bell.
the
We are
work
close.
that,
It's interesting.
done.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yep, yeah, and there are a lot of, a lot of major cities look at it as it's a feature. So if you've got people that are relocating to the county and they're trying to evaluate, they're not from here, they don't know anything other than what they can find on the web and research. It's another point for them to say, I like that, I'm attracted to
Right.
that, so.
Well, and I've actually had a subdivision required and what to recommend. Very interested in, you know, trying to follow guidelines and make a subdivision that was appealing from a
Right.
tree perspective, so.
So, Mike, you'll follow up on your side
Yeah, I'll
with
do that.
what we might need to do to sign up, what tree availability there would be. I will follow up and kind of do some research on some local tree cities in Tennessee and see what they've got in their language and put something together. And I guess I can forward it around for everybody to read through what I compile. And then at some point, it would be introduced to the BOC as a request that they would adopt that. Then I can also pull, I did go back through the past meeting minutes, and I guess, I'm not sure if we had a flyer or a newspaper with this most recent Arbor Day. There were some plants given away.
I donated,
I'm just wondering what we might have paperwork-wise that I could show that the event was on this day, and here are the activities, or here's what we're giving away. I recall there was,
I'll be able to get history.
done there, right? It was done in the fall.
Go back from a paper standpoint.
and I can also research, maybe one of the different Facebook sites might have had that flyer or some.
Remember the flyer?
I remember how it looked.
Yeah, I don't remember what it said.
I don't remember anything about it, it's what it said, but I remember how it looked.
It looked good.
It did.
I remember
I
that.
have no clue what it said.
I do know from past experience, we need
Yeah,
to for
Yes,
whatever we
yeah, I
want to
agree.
do.
I agree.
We tend to wait.
we tried
till
for years.
March.
and-
Particularly with the availability of trees and getting our place in line.
And I will tell you that when I talk with the state forester, first thing I'm going to ask for are red buds. But he'll laugh at me because they're hot right now. We're talking about the difference in him giving us 50 or selling 50.
Bet you I can dig 50 up out of my yard.
Go right ahead.
All kinds of poplars.
You ever heard that robbing Peter to pay Paul? Did you ever?
Or you realize you're on the mic.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
I know, but they're in places where I don't want them.
I believe Debbie Rainey has just donated, how many? To
Several.
several? Okay.
None.
Okay, thank you.
That's great.
5.3, the funding for the design and planning of landscape architecture design encompassing the full park system.
I'm so glad I have my name on such a long thing. I think this all stems from when we set aside the money ages ago to work with the landscape architect to come up with some sort of design that we could work toward at History Village, what is now Veterans Park, and all of them? There's another one. Is there another one?
There was a
Was it the entrances to Fairview? I think we were talking about redoing them because weren't there plants out there that aren't on the tree list?
You're right, right. And I submitted 3 different designs on that already.
For the Welcome to Fairview
A few years
signs?
ago, yeah. And we took the one at the top of Whippoorwill Hill on the east side, we took that and said, okay, at least get started. And that's where they planted a redbud by the sign. And everything else around it is the Chinese hollies that are not on our list. But I spec'd in, and it was 3 different kinds of redbuds at 3 different signs. Highway 96 on the west side by the Triangle Park. And so that's already in, and there should be a record of that in with the city. And I, of course, have that record. But that, and I think I even priced it out, if I recall.
Did you lay hands on the original?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that too, we had talked about that if we had a landscape architect that could draw up what we wanted it to look like, that we could work toward that instead of everyone just piecemealing, well, let's do this week and then next year let's do this. So I think that's where the funds, we appropriated funds for someone to come up with that design. And I think that we had talked about Lois and Associates because he was here one night and we were asking him what he thought the cost might be. But I think now, since there's this disconnect, that possibly we might want to talk about another landscape architect.
I could
And I
give
was
you a
going
long
to say,
list.
can you give me a long
Yeah,
list?
absolutely.
Okay, can you email me that list? Or email me at
How many
least
do you want on that list?
4.
4? Yeah, and because as I mentioned earlier, my last conversation with Andrew Krager was that he was excited about the possibility of doing designs for the park.
Well, I think because of the disconnect between Los and the state, there's been some concern about what could have caused that. And so there's kind of called their work into question. Because Los has been connected with the state for years and years and years and years.
Right, and no longer.
And no longer. So I think there's been some concern about why that could have happened. So if we can get 4
Get them to you.
in addition to.
Good people
Okay.
that likes natives.
Name Bob and Sam and such.
Yeah,
architects.
yeah. Well, it'll be next week. I'm at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm getting up and heading up to Delaware. There is a state called Delaware. I found out. I have to help work at a botanic garden up there.
And you know, the Irma could be headed there too, by the way.
I'll be out before Irma.
Okay.
Right now, we're just going to look at potential architects for,
And tell me again, the parks it's the Triangle?
the
Historic,
Historic, yeah, I'll keep getting it right.
whatever the whole title was.
historic, history village.
History
That's what-
Village.
Is that what we call it? And it's
We
historical
call
village.
it History Village, and that's not the right name. We always
What
got
did he
corrected on
call
that.
it? He wanted to call it something.
I don't have a clue. I can't remember.
All right, so
It's in the
it's
minutes if we look back, because I know.
heritage.
I don't think that's it.
Back in the minutes, I
I will
know
look on
that
it.
we asked.
But it's
Just
the
send me,
triangle
just send
school.
me
in
forward,
the Veterans Park.
and hopefully when y'all
Well-
meet Monday night, that we can combine some of those, we can bring some of more that, I mean, we'll have to wait to see what that meeting Monday night does.
The reason I would like to know a little information is it will help you if I give you 4 names and these people don't have a clue on what you're talking about. But that's up to you. But if I talk to them and say, okay, here's what the city's interested in, okay?
So I think the city is interested in
Yeah,
having a landscape design for the Triangle School property,
right? Veterans,
park property, around City Hall.
all this, okay.
That will be a design that we can see, we can start working toward that. So that if we can do part of it this year, part of it next year, part of it 3 years from now, then we'll eventually get to what they see.
Right.
Yes, and we also, and have input from the community. And I think the tree board and the park board and the Friends are meeting Monday night.
Have a meeting, there is a meeting. I would have to.
Oh,
go
are
back
they
and-
in on this?
I would have to go back and look at,
Yeah.
I know there is a meeting, but I don't have that email content fresh in my mind.
Right, so
Direction or
I,
something to donate, so
right, so everybody needs to get together and figure out, and talk to the landscape designer and say, okay, this is what we would like to see, how do we make that work and it not look like we've just randomly done things?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you.
this one. Craft a list of suggestions for the Planning and Codes Review Project related to approved vegetation care throughout the life of a business. Louis Commons.
I believe this was, it's come up a few times. We get a business in town and there's landscape requirements. They come through and they plant the proper vegetation. Everything looks great. They get the thumbs up and they're certified. But then a period of time goes by and say some plants start to die or have issues. And I don't know that we currently have a mechanism as a city to address that or a standard that, and so this was, we were theorizing in previous meetings about how best to do that. And we talked a little bit, is it a bond, is it something else? And so with the knowledge that they're currently kind of reviewing the codes and the requirements and going through a process that might take a year to 18 months, that we would be able perhaps to provide some feedback on what they might consider including in that would address this issue while they're addressing all the other things they're looking at through that process.
Well, you know, we've always brought it up as a, okay, how do we get the owner of the property to abide by this? And it was all, okay, we have a bond. So if they don't owe any, or we don't owe them any more money, you know, and so, you know, Wayne Hall said, well, okay, let's at least get this replacement warranty up to three years. And you know, Bowie Commons is how many years now?
I didn't think we were
So-
supposed to mention Bowie Commons anymore.
I love that place over there, the landscape. There's plants over there that were not on the approved list, but, you know.
Well, I think that
But
we,
they can come in, okay, so, they could come in and replace those trees with anything they want to. Is that, what?
I think we need to make sure that the design review manual says that the landowner is responsible for the maintenance of their landscaping forever. And then if they want to redo their landscaping, it still has to come back before the tree commission to make sure it's approved tree and shrub.
I agree.
So I think that we need to draft that, send that up as a recommendation, that it goes into that design review manual with the planning commission.
Well, and also maybe, I mean, and that makes sense if I'm going to redo landscaping, that I would need to come back, but we need to make it in writing so everybody understands and it's enforceable, but also possibly something that compels them to install new landscaping if there's a problem. And I don't know if we have regulations like right now, if you don't cut your grass, I think the city can come by and give you a warning and then come cut it for you and send you the bill. So I don't know if we have something.
In the original plan that we came up with and worked for hours with the planning commission, there specifically states that for every day you're out of violation, there's like a $50 per shrub, per tree, per day that you were charged.
Who enforces that? Is that codes?
Should be codes,
Codes
although I
inspector
remember
will?
us having a debate here one night when Kim Bryson was still mayor, that was your job.
I'm not, and I also remember saying that I am not going to go up to these
I
people and
remember.
say, you're in violation.
So I would
I
think
can
that was following
inspect,
codes.
I'm inspector. I'll be glad to inspect and say, no, that's not right, and I can report this back to my direct supervisor.
I would think that would be codes. Your yard, that's codes.
Or dead plant would be. Who knows what they're looking at, whether it's live or dormant or. Report that to codes. Codes, it should come from the codes department.
I would.
I think it needs to go to the design review manual through planning commission. Let's get it put in. Yes, and then he vets all that as it goes to the planning commission. But I think we do need to make sure that we talk to Will Owens and make sure that that gets put into that.
So who then would describe those couple of paragraphs that basically are the recommendation to make sure we're adequately describing it?
I think that we have it in our original documents. It was just never
Yeah.
put into the design review manual.
We had years ago workshops, in the room over here, right in this building. And we had several workshops to get that written out. It's somewhere in the archives.
And Jane, your original copy you have ended in there? Because we pulled that up before.
I'll look again.
Well, I think that what we've been told is that wording never got put into the design review manual, so therefore, it's really not part of.
And so a question, if it needs to be worked on a little bit, what is this commission's responsibility on that?
I think we need to send up what we would like for the language to be.
To planning,
I think that according to the last update that we had for this commission, we report directly to the BOC, except for landscape plans that we approve that goes directly to the planning commission. Everything else goes directly to BOC.
right, right.
Could we say by the next meeting, everybody kind of bring their thoughts?
What's
Yeah,
Will's
that's it.
timeline? How close is he to being finished with the, do you know?
He keeps saying
So we need to get it done quick.
You know, this is another one, you know, like Scott, you know, looking at other communities and what they have done. I would be curious on what other communities have done for something like this. I don't know of any that I've worked with in the past that has perpetual replacement. So, not to say that we
So
can't.
Are we thinking that Franklin just lets the business owner, lets their landscaping die and they don't?
Yeah,
I can't believe, and Franklin's is online, because the friend of mine is the legal person, and I talked to her about that, and she said for me to go online and read it. If I couldn't find it, she would send it to me, so I'll follow up
I'm
with her too.
curious.
I'll follow up with Franklin,
Need to do something.
or just what the rules are.
As you're looking around it.
Yeah, I'll make a point just to go poke around and see.
I like it.
It'll be a unique city.
Oh, man. Mm.
Comments on this, correct?
So 6.2, it comes to my attention that we do not have an official secretary. I mean, and typically, we elected officers in June or July. So, and Jane has expressed concern about not being able to devote the time to being chair. So I guess that's the discussion. So what do we want to do?
Well, since our numbers are much smaller than they are used to, and we have a non-voting member and a BOC member that we're not sure
What I can and cannot do.
what, that leaves the three remaining members, and we do have a member at large. Identify, so if anybody, we have another position. There's five, should be five positions plus yours. We don't have.
We have an open
We
seat.
position. So, we can draw straws, we can toss going. I just, right now, there's a lot of things going on work-wise and in my personal life that I just really do not have the time to take on the responsibility of being the chairperson to the degree I think it needs to be. Our two remaining members to see if either one of you are.
You're the vice chair.
Sitting there much too quiet, Scott.
No, I don't mind, performing in that role. I guess, Christine, what are your interests?
I'm afraid that at this point in time, I mean, I've only been in two government now to be able to guide the meetings, because I don't have
And are you interested in vice, or are you kind of feeling like you would rather?
I would be closer to being glad to back you up or back someone up than to have the full responsibility.
Okay, so, and then you took these notes, and these are great notes, so
Were they
if we.
acceptable? I didn't know if there was
I
enough
thought
detail,
that, I
not
think
enough.
they're wonderful. I think they're wonderful. So if you're
Adequate.
comfortable as the secretary role, that's the other role we need to.
I would be comfortable.
So I'm not even sure with this few members how we go about nominating, but
What?
We need, open position.
I agree. We need to get someone to apply for the position.
Her to be secretary.
No,
No.
no.
So
Scott will
I would take
assume
the
the
chair.
And you will stay as
the
vice?
Vice
He
chair.
would stay as vice, and then, we would have the secretary.
And then next year, if we get the other position filled, we would vote again. Typically used to vote in January. Now, this last year, we changed to June. It was June.
Was it June?
Well, it was, well, although I think we probably needed July because the new members, a lot of our terms expire in June.
So I think that's why it was July.
Moved to July. That was at the request of one of the former BOC members. January just seemed that's the way traditionally it had been done, because it was the beginning of the year.
Beginning of my year.
So
I think you'll need to make a motion to nominate new. I think there'll need to be a motion made and then it voted on. Get me to make the motion. Okay, so I make a motion that we move Scott McCoy to chair, Jane to vice chair, and Christie to secretary.
I'll second that emotion. I'll second that motion.
Sing that song.
Sing, Jane.
Other discussion?
Aye.
Any opposed? You can't vote.
Vote.
Thank you, Scott, for.
Oh, no,
being
no,
with
thank
Scott,
you,
coming
thank
to this
you.
role,
Thank you.
and Christie for taking that. I will be here to support both of you, too. I'm trying to, but I don't, that's not an option right now. Somebody will hog tie me if I try to leave. So.
I do have some, no.
And all this I know is getting recorded, but that's okay. We have a good time in our meetings. Staff review meeting, Mike, do you have any?
Yeah, there was not much on this last one, some changing on zoning. Yeah, however, and I'm sorry I don't have my notes with me on this. But you could probably know the subdivision, the one that's that's visible, that's been under construction forever and ever for years, right outside of the loop of 96-100, where the roadscapes are.
Yes.
I can't remember the name, okay?
Something starts with
So
a B
they've-
and it.
So they finally have said, that the developers said, okay, we're now ready for the next phase. So they're going to extend that. So we established that at a 2-foot hill strip, which is the grassy area between the curb and the sidewalk, okay? It's too small for them to put street trees. But he said that he's going to put trees in each lot before the houses are sold. My question is, would those trees come underneath the ordinance of the approved tree list? Not the homeowner,
It's the developer.
it's the developer. And my take on that, and this is what I'm opening up for discussion with the board, is that yes, it should, because it's the developer that's responsible for those trees. If he plants those as street trees, yes, those do, as public street trees, those do come under the ordinance of the approved tree list. But putting them in each individual lot should be only the trees that are.
I agree. Because he's the developer, not the landowner.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, there's probably not a subdivision here in Fairview from past couple of decades that have not put a street tree, or, a tree in each lot. And those trees from before that were put in those lots, that's not necessarily under the approved tree list, only approved tree list. So what we're doing now is setting a precedent and saying, developer, you build the houses in these new subdivisions, and you're putting a tree in each lot, or trees in each lot. Those trees should come under the tree list.
revised ordinance or an interpretation of our current ordinance?
I think the planning commission, would be the one to see those plans and make sure those trees were on the tree list. We've also had discussion in the past about a developer that if your business is developing property, then until that property is sold to you, then that is a commercial development. So if you are in the business of developing and have a plat that you're going to develop, then you should also come to this commission to get that whole thing approved, your tree list approved. And that was something else that never got moved into the design review manual. So I'm wondering if we should also talk about that.
Well, that's what this staff review is all about, is that city planner is all about it. She's saying, well, yeah, we need to set it up right up front. Let's tell them, okay, well, if you're gonna do this, then you go back on the website. There is an easy way to find that approved tree list, and you are required to plant those trees. So, on that. So, that's what I said. I'm just telling you that's what I said on this last staff review.
So that's something the planning commission will make sure is being enforced. Was that supposed, then,
But at the staff review level, that's the introductory.
Right, so it should also be that comment.
so would it be possible that, because I know lots of times what happens at staff review, those notes do not necessarily make it to the planning commission. So would it be possible that since you are the representative of the planning commission on this board, that anything that you know that it should be included, that you are checking that too?
Yes, if I am aware of it, yes,
You remember what's developed? Brad,
You
what
know,
is that? It's, great Scott, what is the name of that subdivision?
Yeah, I probably.
Right
have it.
across from Westwood. I mean, right across the
Been there
street.
forever and ever, and
Yes.
I've been,
You
it's
can
been.
get, you can get that to Christie though, right?
Yeah, I
Mike?
could probably find it. It's in an old email.
staff review notes are part of.
But just be aware of
Yeah,
it.
But I can just,
Yes.
I can just confirm, and then if it's not, I can make sure that it's
Okay.
That's,
We heard from the Ace Hardware? Okay.
not since the initial approval. We made a few changes on some trees. They had to make some changes on the trees. This is back, gosh.
Find it, Mike, and you'll get it to Christie. You've got your email address on the.
Is it Scarborough Village?
No.
It's not that?
Update on the tree bank funds.
I do not. I asked for that. I do not have that. There's been no funds come out of it. So the last report was 120-something thousand, I think, and I don't think there's been any money come out of that, and there was none projected to be coming out.
That includes what came from the medical center?
Yes,
That is in?
yes.
Okay.
4 of the minutes.
101,000. Right.
Like $8. So maybe 12. It was $8 on 90,000. Okay, we don't have any citizens tonight, so there's no citizen comments unless anyone comment as a citizen. Okay, our next tree commission meeting is October 3rd. We will adjourn this meeting at 8:26.